with his heading People as Infrastructure, Jonathan Haylock. Is Jonathan here? Yes, Jonathan, you are here. Welcome, Jonathan. Big round of applause for Jonathan, folks.
Thanks very much for that introduction. So good morning, everybody. I'm Jonathan, and I'll be rattling through this quite quickly because I've got a lot of value I want to give you in the little time that we've got available together. So as well as me going at a bit of a pace, you'll be putting up with a North London accent that I've got as well. But what I mean by people as infrastructure is that it's the interactions between people and teams and authorities and the decisions that are made in those moments. It's the connective tissue that keeps the projects moving forward all the time. And as engineers, you know, we engineer concrete contracts and claims to the nth degree, and we're really good at that. But for me, over the last 30 years, it's been my observation that we really just allow the human systems to emerge by chance, really. And I've discovered that this has profound ramifications on our project performance and success. So my proposition is simple. It's to deliberately design the human systems, and so that we can measure it, so that we can lift delivery reliability and hence the success of our projects. So I want to start by asking you a simple question. How good do you think that we are at delivering projects successfully? Well, it's a simple question, but really it's a loaded question because it's really important. The importance is because we're delivering public infrastructure. It shapes our communities, economic prosperity, and ultimately it demands the public trust in how we spend public money. And this has been an obsession of mine for the last 30 years. And when I came into the industry, you know, one of the first documents that I read out there about the industry was the Latham report, the Egan report was another one. And it was about how the industry is underperforming. And you know, I was wondering whether I really wanted to go into an industry that was underperforming so badly, really. But over the decades, you know, it was my incentive to really be part of that reform, really, so that we are delivering projects successfully. But what I found, well, I'm standing here today and I'm asking you guys the question, who have been around in the industry for 30 years plus, are we any better than we were 30 years ago? Because what I found is, look, you know, decade after decade, we keep reading the same reform reports, dragging out the same problems that we've always had. So to answer this question properly, what we need to do is look at what actually defines success in projects. So if you go back to the business cases, there's a massive decision with a lot of emphasis on, you know, on return of investment. Are we going to decide on this project or this project? And it's around time, cost and benefits, you know, the real return on investment. So let's get into the evidence. How good are we at delivering it? Well, up here we've got Professor Bent Flyvberg. He's from Oxford University, and he's got probably the most comprehensive data set of project data anywhere in the world. He's got 30 years of data, 20,000 major infrastructure projects from over 130 countries around the world. And the data shows that on budget, we're delivering 47.9% of projects. I mean, that's a reasonable kind of around 50-50 mark, not too bad. How many on budget and on time? Well, we're looking at 8.5%. And on budget, on time, and to benefits? Well, 0.5%, believe it or not. I mean, it's rounding error, so we're not doing too well. Now, if you're wondering, you know, this data might be based on larger scale projects, and obviously we see more publicly these larger scale projects going over budget, but quite a bit. And what this bar graph is indicating is that those mega projects are on the far right-hand side over there. But I wanted to show that, you know, if you're breaking it down into the different categories, different sizes of projects, that really we've got, that it's not project specific, the reasons why these projects are going overrunning the way that they are. And the mega projects are really just, they're amplifying the problem just because of the sheer scale and complexity of them. But what I'm here to suggest to you is that it's really a systemic problem that occurs across all types of projects that we're delivering in the public realm. And what that looks like in reality, I'll just run through a few examples. We've got the Perth Arena that was built quite a few years ago, about 12 years ago. And that started off at around $160 million. And that blew out to around about $550 million. Now, what can you point your finger at? What can you put your finger on about this? Why do you think that went over? Do you think that the prediction right at the front end at the business case was a bit optimistic? Or do you think that it was a project delivery failure? Another project that, this one is quite close to me. I was working on this for over 3 years. The Bunbury Outer Ring Road project is a key interface manager between client organisation, the contractor, the designers, and the external and internal stakeholders. So I've got a lot of pride attached to this project. It started off at $852 million, but it blew out to $1.46 million, and there was quite a lot, I guess about hundreds of millions of dollars worth of scope that was stripped from the original scope as well. Was that an optimistic prediction at the front end, or was it a delivery failure of the project team? I mean, I take exception to the latter because I was part of that delivery team, and I know very well that the teams that I was working with were profoundly competent. And then quickly, Thornley Coburn Rail Link, a recent one that started off at $716 million and went out to 1.35. Optimistic projections at the beginning or delivery failure? Starting to see a pattern emerging here. And then finally, the Geraldton Health Campus. Predicted at the beginning 73.3. I'm showing this one because it's a much smaller scale, but the principles still apply. Blew out to 188 million, 156% over budget, and 4 years late. A little optimistic to begin with, or delivery failure? Well, what all of these projects have in common across civic, venue, rail, road, health, is that they fall into the predictable category of 80% of projects going over budget. It's not an individual project problem, I don't believe, because we've got highly capable people across all phases of the projects. And, but it is a systemic problem across small to large-scale projects, and the pattern is predictable based on the historical evidence. And not only that, but we've got governance oversight. This is the Office of the Auditor General. They produced in 2023 a transparency report for major projects, and they classify major projects as 20 million and above. So the point of me showing you what this is about is that they've put the emphasis within that report as that it's a failure, that we're failing the parliamentary representatives and community confidence in how public money, public investment is managed. And this is the core, really, of what we do, because we're the guardians of public investment and how it's being delivered and managed. And their concern of the Office of the Auditor General is that it's reputational harm to the public works delivery. So over the last 30 years, I've been really wanting to find out what it is and what can we do about it. So the predominant thing, I mean, we're all in this room because it's all about the people. It's people that make projects happen. It's not the processes, the standards, or contracts, or even the methodologies that we use. And it's not individual effort, because if individual effort, intelligence and professionalism was the reason why we're failing on these projects, like the way that we are, don't you think we would have solved this problem decades ago? Especially with nearly all organisation now has an underlying value of continual improvement. But the reality is that projects keep blowing out, and we must look beyond those technical systems, and we have to look at the human systems in the environments in which we work in. And part of the predictability of projects is in the human behaviour. Because, through behavioural sciences, we understand what's predictable in human behaviour, especially in the environments in which we work. And now we know what behaviours are predictable, they're observable, and hence they're manageable also. And it's not just me saying this, these are the demigods of the corporate world as well, they're saying it too. The single most under-addressed factor is the human coordination system. And in fact, it comes down to, especially in our environment, political, cultural, and psychological. So I want to run through each of those, and beginning with the politics, the political and governance dynamics. Public infrastructure projects are deeply connected to the political commitments and treasury. So what happens in reality is the strategic pressure that we all know about this, that happens when a project goes up for funding. There's pork barreling, that's a technical term, which is manipulation of the project dynamics, the cost, the time, the benefits. And they're shoehorned because they're jockeying for position in a competitive environment for the funding amongst other projects. And when this happens, I mean, we know this happens, it's a reality, but when this does happen, then what comes out the other end is a project that is probably the worst project that could be selected, with the most unrealistic expectations that the team that, who are in the job to deliver, they're set up for that. And just as a point of note, I wanted to highlight that with election commitments, they account for 74% of the total value of all cost overruns. So it's almost a guarantee that if you've got an election commitment, it's going to go over time and over budget. So this is the fabricated reality that we're dealing with on project teams. And really, it's called, there's a proper technical term called strategic misrepresentation. So now moving to the organisational culture. So, we all go into projects and our hopes are, we all go in there with positive attitude. We want to do the best on this project. We want to deliver it. But when the reality kicks in, when the paper project starts, or the project that we're working on diverges away from the paper project, then attitudes change, dynamics change, the environment changes. Planning and scheduling is compressed further. That's optimism again. Resources are expected to achieve more with less. That's again more optimism embedded into the system. Optimism biases within the organisation. And how we turn up at work. Well, like I say, we're in survival mode. And going into work in survival mode, we're psychologically unhealthy as a team. And consistent patterns are observed. And people showing up with people show up to work with they shy away from speaking out and being open. They don't want to be the deliverer of bad news because it could be career limiting. People become more cautious and more defensive and less productive. But what we need is a human system to push back against, right the way through the system, to identify strategic misrepresentation and optimism bias when it's in action, so that we can call it out and push it back upstream. Now, the solution to this, I've got a couple of steps that I want to get to right away. Now, imagine you're at the business case. So this is the critical stage where the stakes are high and you're setting up the project for success or failure, essentially. And what we saw with those statistics earlier on in the talk, with 80% of projects going over budget and over time, well, this hasn't changed in the last 70 years. So why do you think that the next year of projects, or the next project that you're going to be working on, what gives you the confidence that that's going to be any different? Because the history, the evidence is that it won't. I mean, the likelihood of it is that it won't. So what we need to accept the reality, not the hysterical, yeah, Freudian slip, but you know, historical data, it's not as a demonstration of our failure. This isn't the right way, I believe, that we should be looking at that data. We should be looking at it to inform our future. And the author, I mean, it's called reference class forecasting. There's Professor Bent Flyvberg as well. He's probably the godfather of this methodology, and he's demonstrated it across the world. There's the UK Treasury and Department of Transport have adopted this, Transport for Ireland, and also the American Planning Association. And we've got advocates in Australia as well, in the form of Infrastructure Australia and also the Grattan Institute. Here's a bit of data for you. So this information is compiled from historical data, and it's called reference classes. So it's organised, the data is organised into the type of project that you're most interested in, that you want to be able to compare the project that you're on against. So it's a kind of way of improving forecasting. So on the bottom left there, we've got, on the horizontal axis, we've got average performance of cost, and it can be time overruns. And on the vertical axis, we've got a share of projects with a given maximum cost overruns. So really, on this, what I've put up there at the moment is 40% of projects have a cost overrun, a maximum cost overrun of 30%. That's one way of looking at it. And then if you slide up the scale a little bit further, you can say that 80% of projects have a maximum cost overrun of 60%. So you can apply that, you know, you do your traditional forecasting, your predictions, your cost estimates, the way that you normally do it, and the fact that your type of project falls within this reference class, that's the likelihood of the cost overruns that you're going to see. Another way of looking at it is that if you're, you know, you could be willing to accept the cost overrun of 20% by applying that 60% uplift on your forecasts. So that's pretty much the nutshell of it. And the next part to this is rational flow. This is the cultural aspect of it, where we've got to be aware of the strategic misrepresentation that we're experiencing, that we're involved in, and also noticing the optimism biases as they creep out into the decisions that are being made along the way. And the godfather of this is Patrick Lencioni. I'm sure many of you have heard of Patrick Lencioni. If you haven't, I'll give you a little bit of an introduction to his work. He's famous for the 5 dysfunctions of a team. And he's also a leading authority of organisational health for a highly functioning culture. And there's some of the organisations that he's been working with. So this is his triangle. I mean, I've modified it a little bit for my purposes here. And so really the basis of it is trust. And once you've got trust, you're able to have like constructive conflict in your organisation. Once you're able to have open and honest dialogue and debate, then you become more, you know, you're able to be more have more clarity over your commitments. And then there's greater buy-in and accountability. And then you've got a shared focus on your outcomes. But on the left-hand side, I want to show you what it looks like in an organisation with unrealistic goals. So it begins with, like, from the top down, there's performative alignment, because we're getting the top-down directive to work towards these parameters that we're given in the project. And that really sustains the optimism, the optimistic view, until really the project diverges from the original goals. And then, like I said earlier, things start changing, the dynamics change. Then there's an artificial harmony amongst the team, and you know, there's a blame game that goes on between teams as well. And that's when people retreat into silos, because they get defensive and start digging their heels in. I'm sure you've all experienced this sort of thing. And then everyone as far as commitment goes, you know, we all nod, and no one really believes that the outcome's going to be achievable based on what we're being told to do. And people are then, you know, they're in a personal survival mode. And staff do not appreciate, they don't challenge or escalate the bad news. Instead, you know, they stay silently compliant and just appease your leadership. You know, yeah, things will get done the way you want them, yep. Staff skew reporting to appease the leadership too. But you know, there's hope, there's good news. What this triangle actually brings, this system brings, is that, you know, you start with a foundation of trust, which is that we can become more empowered and optimised as people, as human beings. We're allowed to speak the truth and collaborate and debate and have constructive, you know, challenging conversations. You know, this isn't realistic, this is realistic. We're challenging it with rationale rather than gut feel and optimism. And then as part of commitment, we're unified with clarity, and we have more buy-in and purpose. That's personal agency. And I can't think of a better motivator in what we do than having personal agency. And then peers, as part of the accountability, peers are holding each other accountable. And they are recognising the unrealistic optimisms that come out, and they're pushing up the chain. There's shared accountability and real collaboration happening. And then the results, achievable outcomes, that's what we're all after. And work becomes more proactive, and we're facing the truth of the matter instead of appeasing. So in conclusion to this part, I've only got 4 minutes, I better run. Noticing, so we'll get to the call to action at the end. So let's see the results. Stepping back to look at everything that we've discussed so far. We've explored the infrastructure delivery outcomes as shaped by 3 human system forces: the politics, the culture, and our psychology. And we've explored how delivery reliability improves when organisations deliberately design human systems. Hence that triangle that we had a bit earlier. So for our people, become jubilant and bouncing to work. Can't wait to get there. Professional confidence increases, quality of interface engagement improves, and organisations retain experienced delivery talent. I mean, Seema, you mentioned that there's this workforce shortage in your discussion. And and I know that there are the younger generation that are looking to come in, they're watching our industry like I did 30 years ago, saying, is this the right thing? Do I want to be part of this? And there are young engineers that are coming into our organisations, and they look at it, they get a taste, and they're like, no, I'm not too sure if this is what I'm after. I don't like being up against it the way that we are. In survival mode. But the benefits now for organisations with using these 2 approaches of evidence-based forecasting and also the organisational cultural improvements, that teams move from a reactive recovery, being in survival mode, to being more proactive and with performance management and problem prevention. More projects are going to be delivered on time and on budget. And this has been evidenced by that, the Professor Flyberg work as well. There's greater portfolio stability for organisations, and I know that's a big deal for a lot of executives. Projects being cancelled because the funding needs to be moved to cover the blowouts of other projects. And community knows all about this as well. They lose out, and they know it. Organisational reputation and trust strengthens. For politicians, governance, and for the public, investment decisions become more credible and defensible. Transparency improves, prioritisation decisions improve, and funding volatility reduces. Infrastructure programs are more stable, and we demonstrate political and community confidence in how significant public investment is managed. Then our reputation as public work engineers will not be defined solely by the assets that we build, but how reliable we deliver them. Competence demonstrated publicly, finally. Let's get there. So my call to action for you is quite simply this. Look out for strategic misrepresentation in those business cases that you're inheriting. And look out in your day-to-day work, in the discussions, the meetings that you're having, the decisions that are being made. Look out for optimism bias. Just be aware of it. And push back if you can, if you catch it when you can, and push back with rationality, with the evidence that as being engineers that we're so good at delivering. Because it's our professional responsibility to be the guardians of truth and rationality in infrastructure delivery. So I'll leave you with one final question for you. Are you prepared to continue to work in survival mode, explaining delivery overruns over and over again? Or are we prepared to deliberately design the human systems that prevent them? Thanks for listening and look forward to the discussion.
Thanks, Jonathan. Any questions for Jonathan at all off the back of that? You've got them stunned.
Stunned, yeah.
Absolutely,
And that's the objective.
Absolutely stunned, Jonathan. I really appreciate your time. If there's no questions, we'll keep moving if that's okay.
Right.
Happy with that?
Thank you.
Good on you, Jonathan. Thanks so much. Big round of applause again for Jonathan, folks.